Let's give it a few more minutes for people to connect. While we're waiting, please put your name and where you're from in the chat. And I've got some tunes for you to get us ready. Also, I've placed a link in the chat for you to nominate your favorite Viz of the Days. So we need your help to keep this going. Let us know what Viz of the Days you would like to see in future events. All right, our first Viz is going to be Gdynia by Kasia. Here's a little music to set the tone for her. She selected It's Only Music Baby by Kid Franciscoli and Julia Mankin. All right. Next up, you'll recognize this one. Well, there we go. It's the Seinfeld theme for A Viz About Nothing. So you're really going to enjoy the presentation Lisa has put together for us. All right, let's get this started. Welcome to the inaugural Tableau Public Tug. We're here to answer the questions, how did you do that? Why did you do that? And the most important question of all, how did you make it look so good? Today, our hosts are Priyanka Dobal.
Hello.
Parithi Loda.
Hi, everyone.
Agata Ketterick.
Hey, everyone.
Ant Pulley. Hey, Ant. They're all Tableau Public Ambassadors. And myself, Eric Howard, I'm a Users Group Ambassador. Our guests today are Mehras, Kasia, and Lisa. Hey, Mehras.
Hey, Eric. Hi, everyone.
Ant and Priyanka will be the host for Kasia.
Hey, everyone.
And Agata and Parithi will be the hosts for Lisa.
Oh, I was like, my video wasn't working. Hi.
All right. Today, we'll shine the community spotlight on Tableau Public superstar Mehras. Kasia will dive into how she built Gdynia and won the 2022 Vizio of the Year Award. And Lisa will serve up her Viz of the Day, A Viz About Nothing. If you hang around to the end, we'll draw for some swag gift certificates. I believe they're $50 a piece, so worth hanging around for. And I'll cover some Tableau news you can use. So let's get into it. Mehras is a data scientist with the Houston Independent School District. He is a co-lead of the community project EduVisors and is active in the Austin K through 12, and the analytics Tableau users groups. His Tableau public profile is full of great vizzes. Check out his latest viz of the day. What is a good SAT score? And let me stop sharing. All right, welcome, Mehras. What's your Tableau fun fact?
I don't have a Tableau fun fact, but there's a fun fact about me that I was actually a high school mathematics teacher and soccer coach for 8 years.
Oh, okay. Well done. Did you watch the World Cup?
Absolutely.
All right. So when and how did you get started with Tableau?
So first exposure was summer of 2020. We had this course in my master's program called Information Visualization, which was half theory of data visualization, and then the technical part, they taught us how to use Tableau. But I didn't use it for 2 years, and it was until May 2022 that I actually published my first viz into Tableau Public.
Okay. So you had a 2-year break between them?
It was the time that I was finishing my master's program. So I studied Master of Science in Data Analytics, and we had exposure to all different courses from time series analysis to like learning R and Python, regression analysis, and all of that. But information visualization was the course that I actually got very connected to. And since I was going to change my career, this was the course that I thought, okay, I'm very passionate about this. I always had doubt about changing careers, but when I got to summer of 2020, when I had that course, when I started learning Tableau, I was like, this is it. And I really enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to make a career out of this. So from 2020 to 2022, I was finishing the program. And then I had a 8-month transition from campus to a district job. I was a math curriculum specialist. So it took me a little bit to transition from classroom and my previous role to the world of data. So that was the 2 years gap.
Sounds like you were working on some good skills back then. Do you remember what your first Tableau public viz was?
Absolutely. My first Tableau public viz was a back to this basic project. It was, I think, week 11 of 2022. The project was about using sets for top N states, and the data was about wine. So I never forget that project.
Cool. Yeah, sets and top N. That's a good one. What was your or has been your favorite Tableau public project?
It's very hard to say. Like every single thing that I published was my favorite. I look at it as my portfolio, something that I can go back and look at. But if I want to name few, I would say my obviously viz of the day, what is a good SAT score, was a very good experience. I seek feedback from Jessica Moon. So it was a back and forth conversation seeking feedback. And I was not expecting it to be a viz of the day. So that's something that I never forget. But the other two that I really think I'm never going to forget was Makeover Monday Live in Tableau Conference 2023 and Back to This Basic Live in Tableau Conference 2023. So those three I will never forget.
Back this May, cool. So do you have a favorite Tableau blog or training resource that you go to all the time?
So pretty much anything that DataFam shares on Twitter, I try to follow. But if I want to name a few, anything that, Andy Cribble produce, I like the Flirtage Twin blog. I like Donna's blog, Rosario's blog. And Dennis Cow has lots of stuff about mapping on I think the platform that he uses is Typefully. So those are the things that I really enjoy reading and following.
Looking forward to have Dennis on next month. What's your favorite Tableau feature or shortcut?
I don't know if it's a feature, but I've been enjoying using Control and Shift to, bulk select different things, and I use that trick for different things in Tableau when you're selecting things as your filter actions, or even when you're working with Tableau prep. I think if you are not using Control click or Shift and click, you're missing out. Those are the thing that I cannot live without.
Okay. Have you used any AI to create any vizzes, or did you see the Einstein Copilot? I know AI is getting a lot of buzz right now. Or is it getting any in the education area in Texas?
So I haven't personally used it to create a viz, but I'm constantly using it, to get ideas. And right now, my team is working on creating a academic calendar using Tableau, because most school districts, when you look at their academic calendar, is just a PDF that doesn't do any good. So I thought that this could be a very cool project, which is a secret project. So I'm announcing it for the first time in this group. I think that would be a very cool project to work on. And when I was trying to gather the data set, I started using ChatGPT to get the R code to. I was too lazy to type the dates and figure out what I need to do. So that's how I'm using it, and pretty much as an assistant for emails, writing, ideas,
The
color
Copilot
palettes,
features.
exactly, all of those things.
Sweet. So final question, what current feature in Tableau is something you want to learn more about?
Definitely about mapping. So we have an ArcGIS analyst on my team, but I've seen so many good random QGIS to Tableau stuff that Dennis Cow does. And whenever I get a free time, I really want to go through all those blog posts to just learn more about mapping, because when we create products for the district, nothing communicates insight more than visualizing with map. So I think mapping is something that I need to get better at.
How big is your district?
So we are, I think, the 6th or 7th largest district in the United States, and we're the biggest in Texas.
Wow.
So last time that I checked the enrollment, we were about 183,000 students.
Are you the only one on your team using Tableau, or?
Before I get here, we had some users, but I was the one that actually was tasked to change all these PDF static profiles to Tableau interactive dashboards. And the fun fact is, I created a Tableau public for our department that we actually share our public-facing reports on Tableau public. So I started this, but now we have more users and we're actually hiring more. So our team is developing using Tableau and Tableau Prep.
With Tableau. Good to know. All right. Job opportunities for somebody out there. So,
absolutely.
Sweet. All right. Well, thank you. And let's move on to our next segment. We've got Kasia speaking about her Gdynia biz, and I will turn it over to Ant and Priyanka and Kasia.
Cheers, Eric, and thanks, Mehras. That was really interesting. Yeah, so just a very, very brief introduction to Kasia, who's going to talk us through her visit of the day entitled Gdynia. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Hopefully she's nodding. That's good. It's very apt that this is our first viz that we're sharing, because obviously, as well as being a visit of the day, it also won the Vizzy for Visit of the Year this year in the Tableau conference. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a sort of community nominated award ceremony that happens at the Tableau conference. So quite a big deal. So well done on that. And it's our first viz. So we're very, very happy to have you here. Before I pass you on, I will just mention to everyone on the call, you can use the Q&A or the chat function to ask any questions, and I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll sort of shout out any questions at the end if we get some time. So please put your questions in there. Otherwise, I will pass over. Off you go.
Awesome. Thank you. So let me share my screen. Okay. Yeah, so just a brief introduction. Hello, everyone. So my name is Kasia. I'm a Tableau developer at EcoVadis. I also work as a freelance Tableau consultant, and I've been using Tableau since around 2018. So throughout this time, I kind of discovered that my specific interest when it comes to the tool lies within like new and exciting and kind of out of the box types of visualization. So that's why I'm trying to kind of maybe push the limits of the tool, but I also love to problem solve things. So if there is some sort of functionality that might be seemingly impossible to achieve in Tableau, I always like to challenge myself to find a way to do that in Tableau. So that's kind of a little introduction of myself. Do you want me to share the viz now?
Yes, Kasia, if you could go to your viz, I mean, we would love to see how you got started with the idea and also inspiration behind this project.
Yeah, so let's just show it here. So this is the viz in Tableau Public online, so you can access it by going to this link. So yeah, as you can see, this is a viz about Gdynia. Gdynia is a seaside city that I live in. It's very close from Gdańsk in Poland. If you're familiar with the geography of the country, then you might know Gdańsk. And basically what I wanted to show in here was the weather over the years, in the last 50 years specifically. And I focused on 4 different metrics here. So I've shown the temperature change, the thunderstorm trends, as well as rainfall and snowfall. So these 4 metrics are represented on the charts in different kind of encoding forms. So the inner circle here, which is split into lines, represents temperature, and we have temperature for each season. And then on the in the middle ring in here, we have temperature presented with those dots that are differently sized. So the more stormy the year was, the bigger the dot. And the outer rim here represents rainfall and snowfall. So the lighter yellow spikes that kind of look like a sunbeam show rainfall, and the overlaying deeper orange, let's say, spikes show snowfall. So that's the viz on Tableau Public. As you can see, there isn't much interactivity in this viz, but that's actually by design. So you can still hover over specific points to find out what the exact number was in a given year, but that wasn't the primary focus of the viz as I was designing it, because the main goal for me was to actually turn it into a print form, as I wanted to turn it into a poster for my wall. So I didn't want to add too many interactivity points because that wouldn't work with the print version, obviously. But still, you can hover over and check the numbers. And for me, really, the primary focus here was to show the overall trend. So as you look at the temperature here, for example, you can kind of see that the, just zoom in a little bit. So you can see that the summer temperature, for example, is the line is leaning more towards the outer rim of the circle, indicating the increase in the overall average temperature during summer, especially in the last 2 decades, which is in line with global trends as well. So that was kind of what I wanted to show with this viz. If you look at it more closely, you can find some interesting insights here.
That's great. I think the first thing that I noticed as well was how it looks like a poster. So it's definitely something that would go on a wall for sure. So how did you come across this idea about this backgrounds and the picture, which is very beautiful?
Yeah, so I actually created a mood board for this. So admittedly, I made it a bit more fancy for this presentation, but I do work with kind of mood boards and some sketchbooks and stuff like that when I work on new projects. And for this project particularly, my inspiration came primarily from the art form of collages, as I was fairly fascinated by collages for quite some time now, and just wanted to create something that resembled that type of an art form. So initially, I didn't think about combining it with data viz, but obviously that idea had to crop up in my mind at one point. So yeah, as crazy as that idea was, I decided to combine the collage art form with data visualization. So from collages, the inspiration came from just kind of the idea of combining different geometrical shapes with very vibrant colors and black and white retro photos that might seemingly be mismatched, but then when you look at the whole, it somehow made sense. There are also retro collages that are slightly different. They do not have that black and white photos necessarily, but they do have this sort of very distorted sense of scale and size that I did kind of implement in my viz as well. When it comes to data viz, that was also quite challenging to find the right way of showing the data so that the storytelling would be still there. So I had to dial down a bit on the collage elements, let's say, because I was a bit afraid that the collage artwork on its own would just take away focus from what I wanted to show with the data. So I tried to keep it maybe not to minimum, but just not as hardcore as you can see here. And I found some data vises that were inspirational for me here. So like this one here, I had the combination of vibrant color and black and white photo, but for me, I wanted to utilize the circular shape. I think it's just something that people are naturally drawn to, circular shape. So I thought that it would work well with the data as well. So I look at the Book of Circles by Manuel Lima, and it's a great resource if you don't know it. It has some chart inspirations and ideas from like that date back to like thousands of years, I think, also from medieval times. So yeah, really an amazing resource. And lastly, some photos of Gdynia that I revisit from time to time. It just kind of seemed cool that I could just maybe tie some of the information about my roots and just give some recognition to the city I come from that is not very well known, but deserves more credit, I think. So yeah, that's where the inspiration came from.
That's a beautiful story, and I love this mood board that you have. So how difficult was it to get the data, and did you have to do any kind of preparation or cleaning for the project?
Yeah, so the data came from this website here. I think I have the translated version. Essentially, this is the National Institute of Meteorology in Poland, and that was actually the only place that I was able to find the data, which was a bit surprising to me because initially I kind of assumed that the weather data is so just prolific and widely available that I won't have any issues finding the necessary data. But it turns out that one challenge was that the data was typically went back to like just a couple of years. So if I wanted to tap into information from like 1970s, it was really hard to locate this data. And also the problem was that the data was inconsistent for specific weather station. So I wasn't able to find the data for like one weather station. I had to combine different neighboring stations to just kind of fill in the gaps, let's say. And also the data came in like a yearly format, or like every 5 years worth of data was in a singular file. So combining those files together also was a bit time consuming. I'm sure there was an easier way to do this, but I decided to go hard way. And in the end, that was the final data set, the master spreadsheet that I've used for this project. It had much more information than I needed, but at the time I wasn't sure which metrics I would pick, so I decided to take it all. But yeah, it was very comprehensive. So in the end, I was quite happy with the data that I was able to acquire.
That's great. So did you have to do some kind of data identification to build those charts in Tableau?
Yeah, so let me pull up the viz here. So here's the viz in Tableau desktop. And if I go to the data source file, I can show you the structure here. So I've just connected to that master spreadsheet that I had opened in there. I didn't have to do any data densification. However, I had to do some unions. So essentially, I just union the same data to each other for different times. And I had to do this in order to be able to build this viz on a singular chart. So if you look at the structure of this workbook, you will find that there is only pretty much just one sheet here that combines all the information, all the data. And the reason why I wanted to do this on one sheet was because I still wanted to include those tooltips. And if I would overlay different layers of the chart on one another, then obviously the layers that were underneath the top one would not have tooltips available. So that was the main reason why it had to be built on this one sheet. So from one side, it's a simple viz because there is just one sheet. But on the other hand, trying to combine 4 different metrics in the same sheet was a bit challenging. But yeah, I had to do this also using the dual axis here. So if I just break this down here, you will see that it looks ugly, but yeah, it's just to show you how this is built. So I kind of created 2 segments here that I combined together with the dual axis. And the reason for this was that the temperature information included different granularity levels. So it was based on seasons, whereas the other 3 metrics were aggregated to years. So so that's why I had to set it up this way.
I think that is very impressive. Honestly, I thought this is built in multiple worksheets. So when you said it's one worksheet, I think it's more complicated than splitting in multiple worksheets. So I bet you would have to do some kind of calculations to get this working. A lot of complicated ones.
No, actually, well, so it depends. I think the main difficulty here is understanding some principles of trigonometry. And once you get there, I think it's not that hard really. And I can show you very quickly how I built each layer, so each segment, and you will see that it's not that difficult. But yeah, I don't have time to explain the trigonometry part of it, let's say, but there are great resources that I've put here that I used to learn those principles. So there was a blog post by Tom Hwan on creating radial column charts, which was very helpful. But for me personally, the talk by Ken and Kevin Flerlich on the Tableau conference in 2019, this one here, was most helpful really. It just explains this so clearly. So if you want to learn how to build radial charts, then I would definitely encourage you to check out these resources. But in essence, what you do in here is just kind of use a grid and try to plot different X and Y coordinates for each value of the metric in here, and those basically the trigonometry fundamentals come in play in order to achieve this circular shape, let's say. But other than that, it's just really plotting different x and y points on the chart. So yeah, I think we have time, so I can show you quickly how I built the two segments, if that's okay.
Sure, I think we can spend maybe another 5 minutes on that.
All right, so so yeah, I can show you very quickly how I created this segment for temperature, and then how I created the other segment for the three metrics, and then maybe it will make more sense how the two were combined with the dual axis. So for the temperature one, I had two calculations created for x and y coordinates, and these calculations utilize the trigonometry principles. And also what they did is that they looked at the unions in that data source and basically returned null for anything that wasn't temperature. So in this this section here, I wanted to ensure that I only use the temperature data. So when you put an x and y on columns and rows, and you use date on the detail to split the points here, you can start building the circular shape. So I have to recalculate these x and y coordinates to use date field, like so. So if I click that on x and click that on y, you can kind of see that the shape begins to arrive. Then I can also add the season, because for temperature data, I wanted to split that further into season. So I have a lot of points in here, and obviously the idea was to combine all the points across different seasons. So I had to change the mark type to line. But as I did this, you can see that when you hover over those points, the path is currently drawn between different seasons rather than across the years. So I also had to specify how I wanted the path to be drawn by dragging date onto path. And that's how I achieved the temperature part, let's say. I just added seasons to size as well, to just kind of control the width of the thickness of the line, so that it's a bit easier to read each seasonal data. So that was the temperature part. It was the easier one from the two. The second one was a bit harder because we had also different kind of forms to create. So we had to create spikes, and we also had to create just simple dots for storm duration. So in here, I started off similarly with just x and y coordinates and dragging the date to detail. My x and y coordinates here, again, were based on trigonometry calculations, where I have returned null for all the tables that were responsible for the temperature information in this case. So in here, I wanted to remove anything pertaining to temperature and just keep everything that was relevant to precipitation and storm duration. So again, starting off with just changing the computation type to be based on dates. And again, I have this nice line in here. But now I need to split this line by the metrics for precipitation and for storm. So in here, this is where those unions also came into play, because when you create unions in Tableau, Tableau will automatically create a table name based on that union. So in here, I created like a group file just to rename them, because they come in like a format of how the sheet has been named in the CSV file. So just to make it a bit clearer, I created this group field and added it to detail. And now you can see that we already see some progress. So we have 3 layers of that chart already kind of visible. So if I change the mark type to line again, we arrive at the very similar situation as before, but this time the data points are, the path is drawn between metric names rather than seasons. So again, this is actually quite close to what I want here, because I do want the precipitation line to be connected from like the base to the actual value, which is what I'm doing in here. So I created like the base along the circle, and then the value, the end of the spike was representing the value of precipitation here. But I wanted to separate storm from all of this, because storm was supposed to be just a dot on its own, not connected to anything else. So in here, I created a calculation called chart split, and basically what I said is that if the my table name comes from that precipitation base and precipitation value, so the 2 kind of tables that control the spike information on the chart, then just return singular value of precipitation, and else return storm. So if I drag this onto color, kind of see that it allows me to separate the storm information from the rest, but the rest, the orange line, is still not showing me the split between rainfall and snowfall. And that information existed in my data as a flag. So I just used that flag here to create another calculation called precipitation split. And basically it says that if the data comes from the unions that are responsible for drawing the spikes, then just use the flag information to break that information down further. So I can drag this onto detail and change this into color here. Oops. Okay, drag the... yeah, okay. Yeah, I have to drag table name to path as well to make sure that the paths are drawn based on the table names. And then precipitation here changed to color, and you can see that the lines in here are now split into 2 different colors, indicating either snow or rainfall. So the last point here was just to change the size of the marks. So I wanted the dots to be sized based on the storm duration, whereas the spikes in here, they already like the length of this the spikes already shows me the value of precipitation in each year. However, I wanted to differentiate between the base and the actual value to kind of make it appear like it's a spike. So I created a calculation called mark size. And then here I just added some random kind of values in here to make the contrast between spike base and spike value. And for storm, I just returned the duration of the storm from the data. So if I drag this onto size, yeah, I was able to achieve the result that you can see in this final chart. So the only thing left was to just combine them with dual axis, and that's it.
I know you said that's it, but I think everyone on this call is pretty much speechless, thinking this is the quick sneak peek into your thought process, and it's amazing. Like, I will go back today and download your workbook and follow along with your process. So thank you for this detailed walkthrough, Kasia. So I think quickly before I give it to Ant, how did you design your background? Because that is what looks like a poster, and it's really eye-catching.
Yeah, so I think the main point in here for me was to just create this contrast between some very intense and vibrant color and that black and white picture that I saw on some of those collage inspirations that I had on my mood board. So in this case here, I've picked the picture at the bottom here is an actual picture of beach in Gdynia from 1939, end of August, which in its own, I think, is quite fascinating because it was just days before the invasion on Poland during the Second World War. So you just kind of look at the people here on the beach and just kind of imagine what was looming on the horizon for them. I mean, it's a bit of kind of sad part about this, but for me, it's very nostalgic because this is a beach that is just 10 minutes away from me, and it's fairly similar today as it was those like over almost 100 years ago. So I wanted to incorporate something that was coming from this region, and it wasn't just like a random picture of a beach. So I think it's just this contrast between that orange and the black and white photo is something that just kind of probably draws attention, I think, but I cannot speak for viewers. I think maybe anyone will pick up on something else in here, but that's at least for me what was like most inspirational.
That is amazing, Kasia. I think I loved your short sneak peek into the process. So I think I'll hand it back to Ant. I see some questions on the chat, so Ant, take it away. Ant, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry about that. I can now.
Okay.
I did hear the rest of it. It was just that last 30 seconds.
Okay.
No, yeah, there were just a couple of questions that came up in the chat. I think the first one may have been answered when he went through, but I'll just double check it anyway. And that was around the line thickness you used on the lines. Was obviously a different encoding to the other things, but I think we saw, is it the seasons you put there?
Was the season here. So I did this because on the final chart here, I played around with different colors here, but I didn't want to add too many different shades that were already on the outer rim. So I decided to keep it very neutral to like this very light gray. And then I figured that, for example, the line for fall and spring just kind of wasn't legible in this setup because there wasn't any encoding with colors. So I figured I would just use the thickness of a line to kind of split them apart a bit.
Very good. Yes. So a question from Jim. Well, a comment first, very impressive. And then a question, did you plot it as a parabola? So your dots, or was it a circle? What kind of equation, I guess, did you use?
It was a circular equation, using radians and trigonometry functions. Very good.
And Lisa's just put another question in. What program did you use to make the background image?
I used Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. So Photoshop for some picture corrections and just split the background, like the skyline from the horizon, but mostly Adobe Illustrator for the rest of it.
Good stuff. I had a quick question. Obviously, we mentioned several times that this won one of Visi Award this year at the Visis. I think we probably all understand why, but I'm just wondering, in your mind, were you expecting that for one thing, and what do you think made it win?
No, definitely not expecting it. Yeah, that was a huge surprise to me. I was just informed by someone who was at the event at the time, and he just sent me a picture of my face on like a screen with information that I won an award, and that was like a huge shock to me. But it was an amazing news, really. I did not expect it, but once I got it, I'm really glad that it's just people liked it, because I do love it, maybe for personal reasons, because it's about my beloved place, my beloved town. But it's really nice to see that other people enjoyed it as well.
I think it comes across, even though you're not telling everyone about it all the time. When you look at it, you can see obviously it's made with that sort of passion behind it, which is probably why it's ended up doing so well. No, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. And I think we've just about hit the time on the head. So perfect. Thank you very much for for sharing.
Sure. Thank you.
We will move along. I'm not sure who's doing the intro for Lisa.
That would be me. And
cool.
Yeah, thank you, Kasia. That was so informational, and I am so excited I got a sneak peek into your thought process. Next up, I and Agata are gonna host the next session with Lisa. I'm so excited for this, you all. I got a sneak peek, and trust me, this is gonna blow your mind. Let me give you a little bit background on Lisa. Lisa Trescott is a research analyst from Gąsiewska-Holc. It's a community college in Oceanside, California, where she supports its college's student and equity achievement programs efforts. Lisa has been using Tableau since 2017. She is our Iron Viz Global Champion in 2021. And for the people who attended the Tableau conference this year, you must have seen her in the epic Tableau battle that she and I had, and she won the battle. It was an amazing experience. Lisa is also one of our social ambassadors. She also co-leads the California Community College Tableau user group. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you for doing this, and take it over, Agata and Lisa.
All right, so a few months ago, Lisa published this eye-catching viz about the relationships in Seinfeld, and it was selected as a viz of the day by Tableau Public. So congrats, Lisa, on that.
Thank you.
And we'd love to hear, what inspired you to make this visualization.
Yeah, so let me share my screen. Okay, can you see?
Yep.
Okay, so so I made this viz for IronQuest, which, if you're not familiar, is one of the Tableau community projects, and this one's run by Sarah Bartlett. And she has designed it to be similar to an Iron Viz feeder, where you kind of get just a broad topic, and then you hone in on something that you want, and you kind of go out and you curate your own data. So the topic for this challenge was advanced chart types, which is not really something that I do a whole lot of. So I thought it would be kind of fun and a challenge to kind of experiment with some chart types that I don't usually use. So this is what I ended up coming up with. The top is a network chart, and I use Tristan Giovan's network chart generator, which I'll talk about in a bit, to make that, to show kind of how many characters the four main characters had dated, and then see where there was overlap and who dated the same person. And then below, I have a timeline, a curved timeline, using Ken Flairlage's curved timeline template to show when each of the four main characters were dating someone. And then I just kind of capped it off with a bar chart, and I've got some bands on the left-hand side to show some fun facts about the characters and kind of overarching numbers and number of relationships that I had. But in terms of inspiration, I was inspired by this chart that I saw when I was just kind of perusing Pinterest, and it shows the whole world of Seinfeld. So it is all of the supporting characters, how they relate back to the four main characters. So based on the color of the line, that's how it's indicating the type of relationship they had. And I thought this would be really cool to recreate as a network chart in Tableau. So that was kind of my original idea. And so I used this chart to start basically gathering the data. I started kind of just transferring this into an Excel sheet. And then as I was doing that, I started to notice some things were missing, probably because of I'll say my intimate knowledge of Seinfeld. So for instance, if I come down here, over here is Tim Whatley, right? And he is portrayed as being a friend to Jerry, but he also dated Elaine. And so that's not portrayed here. And then right above him is Poppy, who again is a friend of Jerry's, but I knew that he's also the father of Audrey, who Jerry dated. And he also had a very brief business partnership with Kramer when he was making his own pizza pie shop. So, so I was adding things like that, and I was adding a lot of things like that. And so when I ended up putting all of this into Excel and then putting it into the network chart generator, it did not work. It was so messy and noisy, and it was too hard to really kind of grasp any insights. I was kind of looking at it and screaming Serenity now, and it was just a mess. So I knew that I needed to pivot, and that's when I decided to hone in on kind of just the red lines, the relationships between the characters.
Awesome. So you collected a lot of the data from this, as well as your own impressive memory and knowledge of Seinfeld. Did you use any other data sources?
I also used this Seinfeld fandom. So they had a lot of lists of the minor characters of Seinfeld and the number of episodes they were in and some extra details about them. They also have descriptions of all the episodes. So between that chart, between my knowledge and between the Seinfeld fandom, I created this data set all in Excel. So the first column is just the main character and the main actor who portrayed them. And then it's the supporting characters, whoever the character dated and who played them. And then I ended up having to make a unique ID because I noticed that a lot of the supporting characters had the same name. And so I needed a way to identify them. So I just combined the supporting character and the actor. And then column F is a remnant of that original idea where I was coding the type of relationship that they had. So these are, I just kept the romantic relationship. So this isn't even necessary anymore. And then column G is a nickname. A lot of these supporting characters are kind of better known by some nicknames like Schmoopy and Man Hands, the Yada Yada Girl. So I thought it would be fun to put those in for kind of the other devoted fans like myself to have little Easter eggs like that. And then I have a description of kind of who they are and how they relate to the main character, the number of episodes that the character dated them, and then a link to extra information on that fandom site about them. And so this is what I used to create my file for my network chart. So like I said, I used Tristan Guillevin's network chart generator. He has a website called dataviz.com. He is a Tableau visionary and also an IronViz champion. And he has made a lot of really advanced chart types more accessible. So if you look up here, he's got this button that says Advanced Viz. And if you click on that, he has 6 different types of charts that you can, it's really just like a plug and play. You enter your data and these charts pop out and it's fantastic. So I use the network chart generator. And when you open it up, he's got just some placeholder data in here. And you can start kind of playing around with some of the controls on the left-hand side, changing the size of your dashboard, changing the size of your nodes, adding link or space between your nodes and whatnot. And he's also got this very important button down here. He has a link to a very comprehensive YouTube tutorial where he goes through all about how you have to get your data into the right format to use in this generator. So I'm going to yada yada over everything that he talks about in that tutorial and just show you kind of the end product. So basically what he goes through is walking you through how to create calculated fields to get this column in your data where you're generating code to use in a JSON file. So he'll teach you how to write this calculation. And in this case, I have nodes for my main characters. I have a very similar thing, nodes for my supporting characters. And then this links tab, basically you have to tell the generator where to draw lines, which character links to who. And then you copy paste all that into a notepad, save it as a JSON, and then you can go back and you can use it in this generator. So if I select my file and I select that Seinfeld one, you can see now my data is in here and it's super spread out and not what my final chart looked like. So this is when you can go in and start playing again with all of the controls on the side. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some X and Y force to kind of compress it, bring it into the view so it's not so spread out. And then you can, you can change the size. So I'm going to use the size field that I have in my data. And it's really fun to kind of watch it bounce around as you do these things. And you can spread the nodes out. You can bring them closer together. And so just mess around with that and tweak it until you get it to the point you like. And then he has this download button. So you just download to Tableau Desktop and it will download your Tableau workbook. open it up, and you have this plug and play network chart any minute now. So I guess we're waiting for that to load. Are there any questions?
Yeah. Do you have any idea like how long it took you to kind of set up the data? Like how much time you put into it?
It's hard to say because I do it over like tiny increments of time. Like on my lunch break, I'll pull some data into Excel, or I'll throw a podcast on and kind of pull data. So I don't know. I always do it in small increments over time, and I kind of like collecting data. I really enjoy spreadsheets and kind of bringing order to things. So I'm never tracking my time, and it always goes by much faster than I think I realize. I look down at the clock and I'm like, oh, it's been 2 hours and I've just been playing in Excel. So yeah, so here is where you get your network chart. So again, like I mentioned, it's basically plug and play. The data comes in and you can start messing it. You can change your colors. You can change this. I used custom shapes that I created to, for the characters and the different nodes. You can change your line colors, and it's all very, it's all really straightforward and pretty intuitive. So I would really encourage you to check out Tristan's tutorial to kind of walk through that. So that was the network chart. But the
Lisa, while
yes.
we're on this point, I have a question for you from Kasia. She was wondering, how were different points sized? What metrics are you using to size the different points?
So in that file that I showed you briefly, there is a piece of code, right, that basically indicates the size. And in this case, it's based on, for the main characters, it's how many people they dated. So Kramer dated 17 people, so his node is size 17. Elaine was 40, 46, 63. And then the supporting characters are based on how many episodes they appeared in. So that's how their size is based. And then I kind of, like I said, I yada-yada'd over some of this, but Tristan has this control over here on the left where you can say, I want to use that size field that I created in my code. And then that's what's applying the size here. And you can change it too. I mean, you can make them bigger or smaller, kind of however, like I said, you can play around with this as much as you want to get it how you like.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So the other main chart I have in this viz is that curved timeline at the bottom. So I wanted to show when the main characters were dating folks. And I started out just making either a horizontal or vertical timeline, but there are almost like 200 episodes in Seinfeld. And so the viz was getting either super wide or super tall, which I did not like. It wasn't coming together very well. And so that's when I remembered this curved timeline template by Ken Flairledge, who is here, I believe. So no pressure, presenting back to the master of this domain. So I will do my best again. But this is his template. He has a lot of templates on his blogs, his and his brother Kevin's blog. So I would encourage you to check that out. So he's got the template, and then he also has a blog post to accompany it. And if you scroll through this, you see he has a whole backstory about how this template came into being, how it's customizable, how you can change the number of years on a different line, some examples in real life. And then the piece that I was really interested in, which is how do I use this? And he goes through and talks about the data. You have a link to his Excel data, which we're going to look at. And then he talks about kind of some of the principles behind it. So looking at his data, it's very simple. It is just 2 sheets in Excel. The first one is a sheet for years, and it's just a singular column of years. It goes from 1900 to 2018. And then he's got a tab for densification. So we're about to draw some curves in Tableau, and a curved line in Tableau is basically just a straight line connecting a whole bunch of points. So we need to add those points into our data. So that's essentially what this tab is doing. We're densifying the data so that instead of having 1 year or 1 row for a year, we're going to have 20 rows for 1 year. And then it's going to create more points that we can connect. So let's take a look at this in the template. So when you download it and you go to the data source, if you look in here, we can see we're just joining years to the densification tab. And Ken has done something called a cross database join, where he essentially is taking every single row in years and every single row in densification and joining them together so that you get 20 rows for each year. And so the way he's doing that is he's just created a join field, which is just 1. So it's literally just typing 1 on the left side of the join and 1 on the right side of the join. What that results in is what I just talked about, which is 20 rows of data for each year. So if you look at your preview here, you can see that all the points are attached to all the years. So that's great, except I'm not using years, I'm using episodes. So I needed to tweak this data a bit. So my data looks a little bit different. Instead of having a column for year, I have a column for the episode. And so that's column A. And that's really all we actually need to use the template. B through E here are just extra variables that I wanted to include in tooltips and things like that. So I wanted them on hand. So really all I needed was column A for my episode order. And then I've got the same densification tab that he has. And then I'll talk about the other 2 tabs in a minute. But first, we're just going to go in and we're going to add our Seinfeld data, which is here. And I'm going to take that episodes tab and I'm just going to plop it right on top of years. And when I go to the timeline, everything is broken. No viz for you. I'm kidding. I will fix it. So the reason this is happening is because Ken has a column called year and I have a column called episode order. So I just need to tell Tableau, hey, don't use year, use episode order. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to right click on year, replace the references, and I'm going to tell Tableau instead of year, use that column called episode order. Click OK, and now everything is back. So the next piece I needed was, so this is obviously a singular line, right? It's showing a point for every single episode in the series. But I wanted to have a line for every single one of my main characters. And that's when I remembered this viz by none other than our illustrious co-lead Ant. I'm sure that has no reason to do with why I was invited to present today. But he created this really amazing curved timeline that looks like sheet music, which I thought was super cool when I originally saw it. I think this was back in 2021. I love when data looks like other stuff, and thought this was just the coolest timeline. And I was very happy when I came down to the bottom and I saw he had a blog post all about this, how he did this. So it was a Festivus miracle. And I went to his blog and he, again, has a whole backstory on this viz and how it came into being and some sketches on kind of his original idea and concept. But the piece I was really interested in was how did he modify Ken's template? And so he used days, I used episodes, and then he talks about how he had to densify the data again. So he had to duplicate the data 5 times for his 5 lines. I needed to duplicate it 4 times for my 4 main characters. So if we go back to that data, you can see I have another tab called main characters, and it's just a singular column of the 4 main characters. So I'm going to bring that back into the data set, and I'm just going to join that just like I did the densification. I'm going to create that cross database join by just typing the number 1 on both sides of my join. And now you'll see, instead of having 1 row of data for every episode and point, now I have 4 rows of data for every episode and every point. So 1 for each of the main characters. Then the last thing I needed, so the timeline we have right now is just a point for every episode, but I wanted to put a point anytime a main character dated someone in that episode. So I had to bring that data in as well. And that's what that final tab is on the spreadsheet. It's just indicating when a main character dated someone or multiple people in an episode. So I need to join that back so I could create a flag in my data. So we'll do that. We'll bring the dating episodes tab in and we'll join it to our main characters. It's going to try to join it to episodes and we don't want that. We want to join it to our main characters. And now we are ready to go in terms of kind of pulling that line apart. So to do that, I'm going to switch back to my original workbook since the calculations are already built out. And let me change the background color as well. It's going to take a minute because we have a somewhat large data set. So the timeline lines are white. So I'm just going to change the background so you can actually see what's going on. So if we look back at Ant's blog, the other piece he talks about is basically creating an offset for what he is calling his stave. So that's a musical term. I'm not going to pretend like I know how to read sheet music. I mean just to create a character offset, not a stave offset. And so he's done this using a parameter, which I also did. So I created this lines. And that's what this parameter is going to do. It's going to create the space in between the 4 character lines. And if I had hard coded this into a calculated field, anytime I wanted to tweak it, I would have to go into that calculated field. So with a parameter, I can, add width to make the lines further apart. I can put some shrinkage between the lines, and that way axis of the line for each one of the characters. So instead of having them all on the same y coordinate, we're gonna parse it out into 4 different ones. So I've got one for Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer. And if you think about your y-axis, right, it's starting down at 0 and going 1, 2, 3, and I want Jerry at the top. So I'm saying when the main character is Jerry, multiply that offset parameter by 3. When it's George, multiply it by 2. When it's Elaine, just basically multiply it by 1. And when it's Kramer, just don't use it at all. Just put it at 0. And then we use that calculated field in Ken's calculation for the y curvature. Now, I am not a trig expert like Kasia and Ken, so I am not going to try to explain this calculated field. All I'm going to show you is where I'm putting the character offset in. So if I take this out of both of these, you're going to see this line is going to go down to a singular line because we're no longer parsing out the 4 different characters. Any minute now.
While that happens, Lisa, I'm loving the zooming effects you have going on. You got to teach us that one of these days. Have you zoom in onto your calculations?
It's an app called Zoom It. It's just
cool.
You just start it on your computer and then you can do the controls like Control 4 and it zooms in and out for you.
Zoom It, is it?
Zoom It. Yeah. So I took that character offset out of this calculated field, and you can see I just got a singular line, which is what I would have had I not put that in at all, which clearly doesn't work because I've got characters overlapping each other. So you couldn't see all of the different characters that were dated. So that's why we're using that character offset parameter. And then once I got this to the point that I liked, that's when I went in and I added the annotations for kind of some of the more iconic people that were dated. I've got the low talker from the puffy shirt episode, the yada yada girl. I've got Marissa Tomei highlighted in here. So that's kind of how the timeline came together. And that was a lot. So I'm going to pause and see if there are questions about this.
I don't think we had any more questions on that.
Okay.
But I'd love to hear more about the design decisions you made while making this. I'm nowhere near the Seinfeld expert as you are, but I have seen a lot of the episodes, and the visualization definitely felt very Seinfeld-y to me. So kind of talk us through how you think you made that happen.
Yeah, so that was kind of my goal, is I wanted anyone to look at this, even if they had kind of a just tangential reference of Seinfeld, and just know it was about Seinfeld without even really having to, consume or digest any of the information. So I used kind of this iconic establishing shot as my my inspiration. So this is if you're a Friends episode, Central Perk, this is like the equivalent of that in Seinfeld. So this is where the characters are always hanging out. So this restaurant sign is very well known, I think, and related to Seinfeld. So it kind of worked out that I ended up only doing the relationships because that made it a stronger reference, I think, to the sign. So that was kind of my inspiration. And then much like Kasia, I'm making Pinterest boards for all of my design choices. And these were 2 of the main images that I used over here on the left. So this one is kind of more referential, right, in terms of translating that into the viz. And then below is, this was kind of my font inspiration. I liked the way they had like this kind of curvy font in with the restaurant sign and the more basic font. So that's kind of what I used here.
How did you find that font? I always feel like I see fonts that I want to use, but I can't actually then find.
Yeah, so this one, a lot of times it's just scrolling through font websites. There's also a font identifier website. I think it's Font Squirrel, where you can paste or put, insert an image of a font and it will try to identify it. And if it doesn't identify it, perfectly, it will give you something that's kind of similar. So that's sometimes how I'll find font, or I know I want a curvy font. So I start, just kind of scrolling through those fonts on either Adobe Fonts or defont.com.
Cool.
Yeah. And then one of my early designs, I put it in here just because I often don't end up where I started. I was originally thinking that I would put the whole network chart in like the window of the restaurant, which ended up I didn't enjoy how that was coming together. It was kind of distracting, right? Having the whole building facade be the background. So I ditched that and just kind of made it a cleaner look and just kind of made the whole viz look like the side of the building. And then I've got my character icons over here, which I created by just tracing images. And then I've got the different circles that I use for the nodes.
That's awesome. Do we have any other questions in the Q&A, Preeti?
No, we are good so far, Agata. But
Right,
I
well.
do have a personal question for you, Lisa. I know we are going to move to the final product. You'll show us in a minute. But when do you say this project looks good? When do you stop? Because as a designer myself, I sometimes struggle because this constant thing that I need to do more. How do you realize that it's done?
I don't know that I have a clear answer for that, because sometimes this viz actually came together really quickly, which is not the case for a lot of my projects. Like the most recent thing that I published was Dwight's resume, and I was working on that back in April and I abandoned it, and it was like 90% done. And then I came back to it and was like, why didn't I finish this? Let me finish it now. So sometimes projects take months. Sometimes, like this one came together really quickly in terms of design. I think just because it was probably so referential to Seinfeld that it just clicked. But some projects will just click, and then some will be months at a time where I leave it and come back to it, leave it and come back to it. And then eventually there's just a point where you're like, okay, I got to publish it. Done is better than perfect a lot of the times, and nothing's ever going to be perfect. So you just got to put it out there.
That's a great advice, Lisa. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I'll stop sharing now.
Okay, this was exciting. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Thank you, Lisa, so much for sharing this with us. I've never watched Seinfeld, but this has inspired me to get into the Seinfeld season. So I'm going to go and take a look into it. And now I'm going to hand it over to Eric. Eric is going to take up with the Tableau News Roundup, and do stay around. We have
swag.
Yes.
All right. So let me share my screen again. All right. Thanks, everybody. That was awesome. Thanks, Mehras, Kasia, and Lisa. Tableau's been around for 20 years, but we're not giving away 20-year-old stuff. So let's get to the swag drawing. While you guys were watching that, I went out and pulled everybody's name from Bevy and put it into this cool wheel of names that Lisa suggested. She's not just a great Tableau public visitor, but she's also a TUG leader. So she has used this on her TUG. So who is going to get the first $50 gift certificate? We have Jim Diener. Yay, Jim. He's one of our Nashville Tableau users. So Thank you, Jim. I do believe I have your email, so no need to fill out our swag form for that. Well, I'll send you the link and you can fill out the swag form. But yes, I have your email. All right, let's do the next one. I should have removed him. Sorry. And the next one up is Pam Bell. Sorry, Mohammed. I thought you were going to get it there, buddy. All right. Well, Pam, if you will put your email in the chat, I will send you a link to our Google form so that I can fill out all the information that Salesforce wants for our demonstration or for the swag. All right. So I love this Tableau over 20 years that they showed at Dreamforce last week. I started way back here with version 7, but I couldn't wait to get to versions 10.5 with Hyper, to 2019 with Prep, and to 2022.3 with Dynamic Zone Visibility. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what's new in 2022.3. All right, let's see here. If you want to do your own viz of the day, we recommend you build a viz that is timely or topical. It spotlights the diverse Tableau community, includes a novel chart type or Tableau trick, and communicates a key insight or story. And it can also highlight new features, so watch out for those features in 2023.2. The most important thing of all is it needs to be visually stunning, as we've seen from Kasia and Lisa today. So I've posted a link out into the chat for our URL for nominating vizes. It's a tiny URL of public tug viz nomination form. So shameless self-promotion is welcome. Go out there and let us know what your favorite viz of the day is on Tableau Public, and we will try to include it on future presentations. So thanks, everyone. Anyone else want to unmute and say goodbye?
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the first Tableau Public Quiz. This was so exciting. I learned a lot. I am excited to be part of this journey. There is more to come. We do have our next public talk date announced. So please do plan to come join us on that. We are excited for Emily and Jessica Moon and Dennis Cow to present some amazing stuff.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So if the leadership team and our presenters can stay back, I would